On the 29th of July, at a Ward 1 Candidates Forum held by a number of DC progressive organizations in the True Redeemer building, DC's Ward 1 Council member Jim Graham showed up late, insulting the groups that put on the Candidates Forum by doing so. Once Jim Graham arrived, his speeches were long on blowing his own horn, but often concealed the extent of his own deal-making with developers at the expense of the people.
Question number 8. The number of homeless families in DC continues to grow, and families are overcrowded at the DC General Shelter, a former hospital that is an appropriate place to house families. Many other families are on a wait list for service or living Mr. Graham. And what are your plans for a shelter in Ward 1 if the CASA closes? Please answer this question, please. Thank you.
He closed Randolph.
Thank you very much for this question. You know, the fact of the matter is that low barrier shelters, such as at La Casa, you know, are very important, but they can't be the whole answer. Because the fact of the matter is we've got to move people into single room occupancies, which is known as SROs. I support the mayor's efforts to do that, which is happening right now at La Casa. I support the efforts which will also give people their own apartments, which happened at DC Village, where DC Village was an absolute nightmare until we stepped in and we said, we want you to have your own apartments. We don't want this kind of family low barrier shelter. And that's what happened at DC Village. Now, we still are going to need low barrier shelters, and for that reason, I support the move of Central Union Mission to the Gale School at 65 Massachusetts Avenue. I worked hard to have that happen. It's finally happening. They're not going to 3512 Joyce.
There was no space in any of the family shelters that were using DC General as a spot to house families. Should be a black letter that we're wearing on our vest, because that's the hypothermia center. So if we continue with double-digit unemployment into the winter, and we have a winter that was like last year, where do we send people who are suffering from hypothermia living physically on the streets? We have no space. So the question that I want, and I'm completely for moving people into long-term goals, trying to get them into apartments, trying to get them into home ownership, trying to create new subsidies to create more public housing. But the question I have is, all of these programs that are looking to the future, why do we close the Randolph School? Why would we close a shelter at a time that we are critically in need of bed space for families, for women, for children, for fathers who are out actively looking for jobs every day, and they're forced to live in the hypothermia center at DC General? This is our crisis at this time, and we need to find something immediately to do that. So I would suggest that any of these schools that we have that are not being, we need to retrofit them specifically right now for families while we have this double.
Like Franklin? What did Mr. Graham have to say about the library situation?
Well, he pulls out the normal stuff that he's had umpteen number of meetings. But unfortunately, he never points out the fact that even his compromise was thrown off the table by DCPL and DC Public Library, and that the fact that these meetings, you can have 1,000 meetings, but if the community's voice isn't listened to, what's the point of them?
So Mr. Graham, basically his response is say, oh, I had this meeting and I had that meeting?
Right. And he's claiming that the ramp is ADA compliant. We don't know how they changed the plans. Last, they were not ADA compliant, so somehow he has inside knowledge. And he also pointed out that the chief made some fire report claiming that this project is okay, but it's clearly going to block access off of Lamont Street, which is about access to about 1,000 people. And one of the buildings in Deauville burned dead into the ground.
Yeah, landlord arson.
Right, and the fire department couldn't get back there readily. This will make it worse. The fire department has never had a discussion with any of these surrounding neighbors in 2.5 years.
This is convenient for those who want to burn out the rest of the community up there, isn't it?
It does make it more convenient. I hate to say that. And it's sad because it's just not necessary. This is an opportunity to increase access. Instead, we're seeing a decrease for seniors and residents with disabilities, and we're seeing a decrease for the safety of the residents living around the library.
Anyone opposed? Jim Graham. Woo! 57%. I'll buy my percentage too. I'm giving people $100 to put yard signs.